Boom, stop. I'm David Tian, Ph.D. In this video, we answer the question,
should you get therapy?
welcome to Man Up, episode 206.
Masculinity for the intelligent man. I'm David Tian, Ph.D., and this is
Man Up! Hey, I'm David Tian, Ph.D., and welcome to Man Up, episode 206. For the past 10 years, I've been helping hundreds of thousands of people in over 87 countries attain success, happiness, and fulfillment in life and love. And I have a guest here, a very special guest, Gui Mansilla. Gui is founder and director of the Breakthrough Center, and he has a background in law. He has a law degree in MDiv, I saw, and method and acting. Mm-hmm. But of course, we're bringing you in here to help us with clinical psychology and to understand all of the issues around that, especially to answer the question, should you get psychotherapy, and who should think about getting psychotherapy? And we got a lot of questions to dig into, but I could go on forever about you and what you do. I've learned a lot from you about psychotherapy and just psychology in general, but I'm gonna let you introduce yourself to the audience, the Man Up audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me, David. And so I am here, I guess, today as a registered psychotherapist. I am part of the College of Psychotherapy here in Ontario, in Canada. And yes, I do a bunch of other things. I am, I think, a Renaissance man, and I really love that about me and my work. Well, I could talk quite a bit about what I have done, and then I have come to my passion for psychotherapy through the path of trying to make the world better, starting with law and becoming a criminal lawyer, then coming back to my love as an actor and working and studying method acting, and then working quite a bit as an actor. And then sooner or later dawned on me that a lot of my work was about consciousness and awakening. And then I, with more intention, starting to explore what it means for me to become a more conscious being. And through that path, after a lot of training, strategy seeking, mentorship, one day I realized that I could actually talk for a living with people, which when I realized that, I realized that I had been doing it since I was very young. That it was part of my method of survival to help people to figure out who they are, to also keep them safe and make them safe for myself. And then through that, one day I literally realized that I could do that for a living, after people starting to now very, very clearly and seriously say, man, can I just see you? Can I talk to you? And then many, many years after that, I became a registered psychotherapist, and I sit with people and I try to help them figure out who the fuck they are.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right, there's a lot of issues to unpack in that.
I threw the fuck there, but
yeah. Well, one thing we should mention, I forgot to mention, we're in Toronto, so this is the Park Hyatt. And so how long have you been in Toronto?
14 years.
All right.
Yeah, and before that I was in Mexico, and before that I was traveling the world for a year or two. And
yeah. Okay, so well, let's just start with that big question. Who should get a psychotherapist? And then I would follow up with, if you are somebody who should get a psychotherapist, how would you choose one? What's the best way to go about looking for one? Right. But let's start off with
with a big question, which is for me is fascinating, because in my own process I hated the idea of going to a psychotherapist. I literally hated the idea of the psychotherapist itself. I had a very strong bias against what a psychotherapist is and do, and I thought that they would just keep you sick so they can keep charging you for coming back. So with that prejudgment, I had to really overcome a lot of personal conditionings to realize that at a given moment in my life, I was really in need for help. And I really couldn't find that kind of help in any other kind of strategy or approach. I ended up finding a psychotherapist, a beautiful woman that truly helped me and potentially saved my life. And from finding that psychotherapist is that I realized the value of it, and I realized that really not all psychotherapists might be the same. And then through my work within the field, I realized that 99% of them are really committed and really into it to help people. So I free a lot of my own biases, but the big question that we're facing is, how do you know that you need psychotherapists? And I would suggest that I would prefer to explore the question more than giving you an answer, because I believe that the answer is very personal. And until you find it inside of you, doesn't matter how many psychotherapists you see, you will just losing your money and time, and you will be hoping for something.
I made the mistake of saying, you need a therapist, man, and then he goes to the therapist, and then he doesn't stick with it. And the other thing is, the therapist asks him, "So why are you here?" And he says something like, "Oh,
David
my
told me."
coach told me." Yeah. So right away, he's already in the wrong frame of mind to approach it.
Right. So the way to go about it is understanding that. To really benefit from psychotherapy, you have to answer that question for yourself. And there's two ways of looking at the question. One is very restrictive and the other one is broad. The restrictive one, particularly in regulatory areas like us where psychotherapy is regulated, we have a kind of straightforward definition. And you will need psychotherapy if you have a problem of cognition, mood disorder, dysregulation, memory problem that will affect your life seriously at a social level or interpersonal level or at a personal level or at a work level. So if you're suffering that kind of stuff, that's a traditional model, that is a restrictive model, you probably could benefit from a psychotherapist. Now, I like to go a lot broader because the kind of work that I do is very existential. So I don't stick to, let me get you back to work. And I believe that is not the main function of psychotherapy. That's a very capitalistic, functional way of looking at it. Let me get you back to your work. Doesn't matter how shitty you feel. Now you're able to do your work, be a dad,
Right.
be who you are. No. The broader definition or the broader understanding of psychotherapy for me is if you're feeling fucked up, you probably can benefit in some way, shape, or form from a good, solid approach of a professional that can help. How do you define more specifically and more technically feeling fucked up? Things are not working and you keep repeating the same stuff that you did in the past to try to make them work. And they obviously don't work and it becomes more and more frustrating. Things are becoming more and more painful. You have nightmares or you think about it all the time. Your mind is obsessing about problems. You find that career-wise you cannot evolve. You find job after job that seems to be dead end and they are not really useful. The question is, how much pain do you think you need to go through to truly go out and find support and help? And I believe that you shouldn't go through a lot of pain. I see as most of the time, 90% of humans that I meet, we do have some pain and we haven't yet been able to face that pain in a way that is sustainable and that will really go for a healing curve that will end up in satisfaction. So I believe that most of us can benefit. Now, the big question is, how do you find somebody that truly helps?
Okay, right.
Right? Do you want me to dive into that?
But just before, so that was a great answer, and it's a highly personal decision to decide whether you should go and lay your soul up, to bare your soul to another human being. And for our show, Masculinity for the Intelligent Man, we got a lot of people who are interested in masculinity and learning about that, and a lot of guys in around the world. I was going to pick on certain countries, but actually, it's, as I reflect, it's pretty much all around the world. Men have an idea of a functioning adult, a functioning male, which is like a tough guy who doesn't have any problems. So they feel like if they're crying, that's a problem. It's like they're breaking down and they need help. But if they don't cry all through the day, they chop their wood, they hunt their food, and they bring it home to the wife and kids, and they're just, and they smile, but they're pretty much just functioning adults, then they're healthy. And I found that that's actually really sad, because the guy will get to 40, 50 years old having pretty much emotional numbness, and they're not even aware of it because all their other friends are emotionally numb. And they end up becoming just a cog in the wheel of society, right? So they fit into a job somewhere, and they end up actually most jobs, you work really hard to create equity for a company that really profits off you. But they think, okay, now this is my life, 40 years of working for the man, and then they die. And that's their life. And towards the end of their life, they're starting to feel these emotions, or maybe not. And one of the big emotions is regret. So maybe the regret that they don't feel at a deeper level, love, joy, happiness, the grief of things that have gone on in the past and so on. So then there are these men who don't have any guidance, but they're more sensitive to themselves and their inner turmoil, to the triggers that are happening in society to them, maybe things that are saddening them outside their little lives or their little worlds, and they become depressed, or they question existential problems like, who am I? Why do I exist? What's the point of life? What is the meaning of life? In a deeper way than the 20-year-old who thinks about what's the purpose of life, meaning like what should I do for my job or something, but at a deeper level, like, why am I actually here? And then they have no guidance through it. And then they start to break down a little bit. Like, so the visage of, or that exterior, the tough exterior breaks, and they start to emote. And there's so their tough guy friends are like, dude, you might need therapy, but usually they're just like, toughen it up. So that's like the bad way of using.
But also you might need therapy because you're fucked up. And because you're crying, I see that you're fucked up.
Right.
And that is the
they
part
see
of the
like,
condition.
you are messed up because you're feeling.
And the truth is, the one that is starting to emote and break down, which I call it vulnerably start to share the truth, is the one that is less fucked up. Is the one that is actually starting to edge towards a healthier. Now, at the beginning of that process, they will look less functional. They will be less functional. Just like if you broke a leg and you need to heal it, you don't want to be walking on that, right?
Yeah.
But if you know that you're broken and you're healing on it, on that leg, then you will become a lot faster than those other people that are looking at you funny, right?
Right. Actually, there's a lot of research that shows genius is actually more along the fucked up lines of breaking down because they're so smart that they can see the cracks in the system. Whereas the people who are sort of like, the farm animals in the system, they just go through it like a cow led to slaughter and then they die. They don't notice. So it's like sort of like the cow is like, holy shit, this is not good. We're all gonna die. Look, there's my buddy there hanging from the hook. You're up. And the other cows are like, don't worry about it. Just keep eating your grain or whatever, right? So what my point is, I personally feel like everyone needs therapy because, everyone could benefit from therapy, maybe not need it, but benefit from it. And then it's just a cost-benefit analysis. And I think if your life and your emotional life is important to you, I think that's something that...
Well, also is that how do you get speed in your process? Because one of the challenges with therapy is that a lot of us start doing this because we have felt the pain and then we come with a poor training or not sufficiently clear and specific training of why we're here, and we do a lot of holding space. And I will do a bit of the holding space for you. Yes, I see.
Yeah.
You tell me more about that. Wow. So painful, huh? So when you just work at the level of let me hold it, which is a very valuable first step, and then you don't know what to do with all that, and the therapist inside, and I do a lot of supervision with younger therapists, they get frozen inside because inside they go, oh my God, what should I do? I'm afraid you lost your mom and I don't know what to tell you. So from there to move into I just hold space for you, we're really missing the work in there, which the work in there is, I call it a combination of support. Yes, I hold space for you until you can learn and develop what you knew when you were a kid, the capacity to tolerate your full spectrum of truth, who you are, what you feel, how you feel about it. So I hold space and I train people to try to develop that capacity again, which again we were born with. When we have that capacity and we have recovered access to that, then is the moment for us to start doing the challenging part of therapy, which is what a lot of therapists don't want to do because sooner or later you lose a few patients, a few clients, because some of them will go, whoa, that's too much for me. Well, of course, I don't do this to keep you as a patient. I do this to help you. And in that, I take a quite shamanic approach. I come here to speak ruthlessly and compassionately the truth. Now, my craft is to learn how to do it in a way that serves you. So I'm not just shitting my own truth on you, but I really share it from the point of, I'm not your mom or your dad. I might be surrogating a bit of that through the process, and I will let you know about it so we can help you heal. But I'm not your mom or your dad, and you're not a kid. So I will work with you as I honor the power of who you are. Therefore, I will be here to be with you and reflect to you what I see, and maybe how can I help you is by challenging the status quo. The stuff that made you come to this place of pain is the stuff that I need to help you through the challenge. And I think that is where a lot of therapists could benefit more in getting the confidence that our work is not to make them feel better. Our work is to make them become themselves. And that is the process that makes them feel better through time. But at the beginning, it's like walking in a broken leg. It will hurt. And our job is to start learning how to heal that broken leg, which emotionally is difficult to find that. And our job is to really go like a soul nurse, touching places and go, where is the pain?
Yeah.
Right?
Make you become more like your real self, is that what you said?
Well, I believe that our work is to help people actualize who they are. So that's a very classic cliche, real self, true self, find the truth. And the reason why it has become is because we're all in search for that. Our job as craftsmen or women is to really put specific strategy to be able to help people achieve that, right?
Yeah. So, so many things I want to say. So one of the things I've discovered in the past couple of years from clients as I've been pushing more clinical psychological approach is that they're gauging their progress based on how happy they are moment by moment. And I found that very immature. And I don't want them to not be happy, so I'm happy that they're happy, but I know that doesn't matter in the long run, in the moment. It's sort of like if you go to the gym and you feel good in the moment, then you didn't work out.
No,
right? If you're like, oh yeah, this was no problem whatsoever, that's a horrible workout. You should be sweating and barely able to, get through it.
Barely able to get through it.
Yeah.
Is probably part of the way that you survive your own personal life.
Well, that's how you
somewhere in between. Well, that's right. But also,
lose fat.
I will think of if you have to go to the maximum that will make you feel like shit. That might not be the sweet spot. There is a sweet spot in which you go there in a sufficiently self-supportive way that will give you the most advanced speed for growth.
Right.
So that is that.
Right. You never want to overdo it.
Right.
Then you need.
But you don't want to be like, oh, that was great. Yeah. You want to be like, okay, that was workout.
Yeah. You want to sweat.
That's the same thing that you have to feel at the end of a good therapeutic approach for 50 minutes of what we mostly use.
Right.
Well, that was fine. A workout, and I get people after just crying for a while, feeling like, oh my god, this is so freaking tiring. That's most of the time a good session. We're working.
Yeah. So one of the ways I've been thinking about, and you went there earlier, is the distinction between your real self and an adaptive or false self. But before we go there, we don't need to go there because I've done that in other videos. Is the idea of truth, and that's something that will appeal to the tough guy, man up guy, which is that the idea of like truth that. Are you getting closer to the truth? Because one way of being happy is being deluded. And I was talking about that earlier with the farm animals and like who don't know what's happening. And it's actually easier to get on in life if you don't think too hard about it. So you just follow your orders, you make your paycheck, and you just move on and don't feel. And you can actually basically be the society will reward you for being a robot, right? Who looks like a human. And then you die and maybe you have the regret. So the truth is what we're getting at. Like, so one of the truths that I've been talking about in quite a few videos is that as an adaptation to events that were traumatic, and there are various levels of that, but even like a mini trauma, and repeatedly would create some kind of splitting off in a way of that, like you need to become somebody else. And every time you do that, I can talk about myself, every time I do that and become a kind of false self or an adaptive self, and over the many decades you end up becoming different selves, each time you break off, it's actually painful and sad. And the idea of not being able to be your true self or be who you are, because, like the average man-up dude is going to be like, how can I not be who I am? That's just a weird verbiage in English. But what we're saying is there's an original self that is still there that's being neglected, and that when you let it out, it's pain, but then it's also power.
Let me clarify a bit of that, because it's a continuum as I see it.
Yes.
The same that health is a continuum. Mm-hmm. So we're never going to be our true self, except if you are willing to admit that enlightenment is possible and recognizable, and that will be maybe the closest we get to true self. So the same with health, it's a continuum. We're not going to ever be like perfect.
Yes.
Because it happened to be that we're going to die. So power of our curve is going up and down. So what we're looking at is to always keep checking it out and going deeper and learning those strategies that allow us to go deeper. I feel more, capabilities to express that more, and then working with that expression and with your fellows around in a way that makes sense and makes you feel going deeper. And not just you. One of the keys for health is the people around me are not full of shit. I do not let them. I do not stand for it. Doesn't matter if he's the one that is selling me coffee or if he's my partner and lover or my kids. When I feel and perceive this sense of we're moving away from authenticity and truthfulness, I like to go for the little fight. And those little fights, those little challenges are the ones that build relationships and also show that we're actually growing. So I wouldn't say that we have to look for the truth as if it's something that it can be achieved, but more as a constant aiming for it.
Right. So authenticity is another way of thinking about, or integrity and authenticity about thinking about truth, like being truthful to or a better representation of what's actually going on in the mind. I recently read a book by Carl Jung. I think the article was Problems of Psychotherapy, and he mentioned that, so he was right at the cusp of the beginning of the practice of psychotherapy. And he said, most of the people we see are fucked up. So they have disorders of some kind. So we're curing people, like a medical profession. And they thought of it more like medicine back then. And, well, I guess a lot of people still do. Yeah. And he said, but there's a lot to offer to the average man on the street. And we need to pay more attention to that, rather than just fixing people who society has deemed maladaptive, but to actually help the average guy. So another way of asking the question of who needs psychotherapy is, what can psychotherapy offer the average adult who is relatively well-adjusted? You know, he wakes up, his happiness level of like 5 out of 10, goes to work. At work, he's on a happiness level between 4 and 6 out of 10, you know, and he just sort of goes through life just sort of on the even keel. And most men after college, they just get into a routine. There's no real growth that's actually forced on them. So they, you know, go to work, come home, eat dinner, sit in front of the TV or the computer, waste 3 hours, go to sleep, you know, or maybe meet some friends for beers and talk about the game, right? And then that's their life. And what could psychotherapy offer somebody like that? Well,
first, it's good to see that if you're at a 5 out of 10 in terms of general happiness in your life, you're really not living life. Life starts to be more or less somewhat satisfying when you're in the 7s, 8s, and 9s, and 10s. And I believe that we have the right to shoot for that. So what we can do to offer people that just don't feel a lot of pain but don't feel a lot of satisfaction is to help them understand the process, strategies, and techniques for self-awareness. When you get to know what's happening inside, you cannot be blind to it anymore. So you will not repeat the same shitty actions every night to try to get to a different result. You will not scream your kids to bed because you will realize that they actually don't go to bed well. They get more aroused and it takes a lot longer. And then you think about it, oh, I will not do it tomorrow, and 3 days later you repeat. So that's when you're telling in a way yourself, if you look at it, self-awareness, if you look at it, there's something here that I'm not seeing. How could I be smart and repeat with a 5 or 7-year-old little boy or girl, repeat this very useless approach of becoming angry and becoming abusive or cruel or mean? Well, sooner or later, if you look at it, you will go, oh, maybe there's something that I'm missing. And of course, through self-reflection and through study, you can check a lot of that. Our work hopefully is to cut you years into months of work. And if we manage to do that, I think that's what we can actually offer for everybody. Now, of course, I do this and I'm very passionate about it, and I believe that people should not go suffering alone. So the idea for me to say everybody needs psychotherapy makes some sense from what I love. But I believe, again, the most important part is that every human being needs to decide if they're worthy enough, valuable enough, and if they love themselves enough to go, you know what, I'm going to put some money and time. And depending where you are, you don't even need to put money. You just need to put time and put commitment. So what is important is to realize that if you're caring for yourself, if you like yourself enough, sooner or later you can go out and ask for the help that you need. And when you do that, results needs to come. And if results are not coming, after a month or two, I would suggest after the first session, but definitely after 4 to 8 sessions in psychotherapy, just change. Trust your instincts. If you don't feel good with the person that you're seeing, don't go like, okay, he or she's a professional, I should just have to. I would say, fuck that. Go with your gut and look for, and most of us, a lot of us offer free consultations. So in our regulation system, you can actually meet with many therapists. And I would suggest do that until you feel, oh, I want to be talking to you maybe for the next months or years, or maybe forever, because the way that we work, particularly when you do existential work, is that I go for cycles. You come with, I'm going to get married, I'm terrified, I help you figure out that, and then you feel good, and then you feel like, okay, I can do this on my own, and I can coast or grow according to what I need, and then 3 years later, there is a baby coming, and then maybe they might need more support. So I see it as being there in the journey for my fellow humans. That's a good way of putting it,
cycles. Yeah, that's really good, the idea of cycles. And just to, so that's a great way of also trying out lots of different therapists until you find one that works, and being prepared mentally that you might need to do that, it's good to know that it's part of like regulatory or like a standard practice. The first consultation.
It has become culturally part of standard practice here, but
right.
it is something that you want to look at.
How common is it nowadays to offer psychotherapy over online, like video?
Well, in my case, my practice is around 40-50% online at this point, and
right.
because my approach is a worldwide psychotherapy approach, and I really love and value the idea that in Toronto I have been exposed to 14 years of a true multiculturalism. So I was already very multicultural, and now I have become more. I work with probably 50 to 70 ethnicities every year. So in that way, I have become naturally now known in the world, and I work with people sometimes from the UN working in Afghanistan that they don't have really access to staff, but they want really good and well-trained professionals. So I would suggest that the future of our profession would end up being online.
And as technology improves, you feel like less difference between being there in person and.
Yes, and actually, what I do with a lot of younger therapists that are really afraid of losing the personal stuff, I say, okay, so you haven't done a lot of Skype thinking about it as a therapist, but you're thinking that you're losing stuff, and yes, you're losing being present with a person in the same room, but now imagine, and can I do something with you to demonstrate? Imagine that you're now like this with a patient all the time.
Whoa. Okay, yeah.
What did you feel right now? We're really fucking too close, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's what you get with Skype or any of those services.
Oh, okay.
Now you're here.
Okay, right.
Now your job is to really make it feel like you're here because you're miles away. But through strategy and understanding the medium, you get like, oh my God, I get you twinks. I get everything out of you because now we're really close. And then the way that I work is I follow through that, and then I try to get deeper with what the patient needs or the client needs in the moment.
All right. Well, one thing I wanted to mention for the guys who are watching this, we have a private Man Up Facebook group, so you should join the group. Click the link, join the group. And we've been running this for over a year now, and 17,000 members, and I've seen a lot of questions come in every day. Several questions, lots of comments. So there are questions within the comments, the questions of the questions, and a lot of the questions over the years I've discovered would be even better handled, or it would be much easier to solve the issue with psychotherapeutic support rather than just here's some strategies, go do this. Because it's like they can't implement those strategies because emotionally there's blockage. And some of the basic questions that we get a lot of, and this might be interesting to you to hear this, is I'm really needy, which means as soon as I start liking a girl, I think about her all the time, and I message her, and I basically ask my friends all these questions. Here, I haven't been on a date yet. How do I get a date with her? And it's been 3 months here, and then he goes on that first date, and then he's counting the minutes between texts. You know, she texted me 20 minutes ago. I then should text no more than, I shouldn't text her right away. And they're thinking a lot about that, and then they destroy the relationship because girls get turned off when you're too clingy right away, or actually too clingy, period.
Well, girls don't like vampires. Most humans don't.
Yeah, vampires.
When you're needy, you become a blood.
It's crazy because like almost every dude goes through that needy stage, and some of them stay in that needy stage for years.
Right.
And that's interesting that it's a parasitical kind of way of being with people. And then so there's that, and then there's if you're
can we talk about that one for a moment, because I have a passion to help particularly male, and when I speak male dominant energy. So it's not vaginas and penises, it's what you're driving your life with. So a lot of women feel this, and most men will mostly feel this. When you're talking about neediness, and it's not just about male or women, it's about feeling needy, we're looking at an original wound in which you didn't get what you needed at the time that you needed. And part of your adaptation is to go around looking for mamas and dadas, and then cling! Okay, I found one. But obviously that adult, at the moment that you have grown up, go like, what? Fuck, get out of here!
Yeah.
Because you're fucking asphyxiating me. So the work of that person that feels needy, and by the way, recognizing that you're needy is probably 30 to 50% of the job.
Right.
The problem is, what do you do with the neediness? And then what you need to do with the neediness is stop looking out, stop looking to those people that you're needing, and realize how you need to do the work around reparenting, learning and understanding who you are, putting the support that you need underneath. And that is where one of us can really help, because we can help you distinguish between what it is that you need and how do you truly get it, instead of trying to cling and
meet your own needs.
That's the essence of that. Right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so that's something that you don't fix just by understanding it intellectually.
I would suggest that you don't fix it.
Needs.
You
right.
try to
even
heal
thinking
it.
about it is
right.
That's
well,
fixing.
you're a very strong male. I think I am too. When we hear, particularly the female side of the existence, talking about things and feeling, we try to jump right into fixing. Tony Robbins talks a lot about it. Well, our job is to move a little bit away from that and learn to process until, in this case, the stuff that we're working through start to heal, and as it heals, we become less needed. So effectively, from the male side, it is a fix, but it's a fix that needs to be going through a process, and that is better described as a healing, as a process of
healing process. Yeah, so you need healing. And then another question I get a lot is people who think too much about what others think of them and are paralyzed by that. So this is especially common in Asian countries where they're haunted. They feel like they're trapped and they can't speak and behave freely because they're worried about what somebody else would think, even if it's not a real person. Because I've gone through the process rationally walking them through a kind of cognitive therapy of like, does that guy is he looking at you? Does he care about it? And they're like looking around and no one's looking at them or paying any attention to them at all. And when they do something, they look and no one really notices. They just look and keep walking. So like, what are you afraid of? And they're actually still afraid of those voices haunting them in their heads.
They're ghosts.
And so if you want to stop giving a fuck about what other people think of you so that you can live your own life the way you want, psychotherapy is a really great way of...
I would suggest so, but also I would look at that as a paradox, because in a way you want to generally go into giving less importance to what other people think or feel, and yes, at the end I think that giving a fuck might be generally a ballpark figure of how to live a better life. But the paradox there is that to get to that place in a holistic way, you need to give a fuck and learn to speak about how do you give a fuck. Mm-hmm. And in that case, for that guys, being able to learn to share with the internal circle, and more importantly internally, is that, oh my God, I depend on your approval, otherwise I will die. So I can start speaking about it, and probably you get a lot of mails that tells you about it and sharing the groups about it. Well, we need to really let that keep going deeper and deeper until we reach the root cause of that. And the root cause of that is somewhere in time when you needed to be supported and being admired and acknowledged by your uniqueness and by your beauty, you were probably judged. And that is culturally, and that is mostly family based. So if culturally there is a lot of judgment, but in your family you have a lot of acknowledgement and acceptance, then you will not grow up with the same kind of problem. But if you have been judged and you have been demanded to be a particular kind of you, to be loved, then you grow up feeling like everybody will judge me and I cannot be me and still get love, get attention, get acknowledgement. So we're craving for that. We're craving for connection. And the way to get it is not through false self, because that doesn't feel good. So if you go out and you're really great and everybody loves you, but when you go back home, you go like, oh, fuck, fucking hard. I'm so tired. I wasn't me a minute. Everybody loved me? No. Everybody loved my mask. Mm-hmm. So truly, to feel satisfied, we have to get at least a few people. And as that community broadness gets better, but at least a few people that we can smell like shit and still be loved and appreciated by them. Be us, be messy, and still feel that we're cool.
But the only way you'd ever find people like that is if they, if you don't give a fuck, so that you can actually be your real self around them.
Right, but if you truly don't give a fuck to the extent of I don't care, then when you find more and more people that you can connect and you don't give a fuck about them, then you lose them. So that is where the paradox is. I'm not going to let your judgment to control me, but I'm going to be sensitive and listen to your judgment so we can relate, right? Right,
yeah. Yeah, one of the issues was around assertiveness and boundaries. And guys who are too concerned about impressing others or think what they're thinking, that's a common issue with, there are plenty of guys who found me through the pickup artist community. And one of the pitfalls of pursuing that path is that in order to become an effective pickup artist, if you weren't sexually attractive to many women before, is to become a false self. And that, in this particular instance, it means giving a shit about whether you're high status, giving a shit about whether a lot of different types of girls like you, and repeatedly, so you're constantly looking for that validation, and over time that trains you to actually become the wrong type of person for your own happiness. And another question that I get a lot in the group is along the lines of they keep meeting women who are bad for them and they can't get out of that cycle, and then they think there's just no good women out there. And maybe that's the case if you live in a town of 1,000 people or something, but if you live in New York or LA and you think there's no good women out there, they're all horrible, probably the issue is you, because you're the one thing in common among all the
relationships. Yes, and the start of that issue was the female caregiver that you grew up with 99% of the time, your mother. So the idea that I will not find love is because most of the time you go back to the roots and you didn't find that kind of emotional support that you needed from the female nature around you. So I would always go and look at there. And the way that I work is I work from the present and through the present. So the only way that I look into the past is when I see that you cannot do this repetitively, or you repeat ongoing the same problem with I keep stuck at the same place. So usually that's the moment to go, so why are you stuck? And being stuck in that way usually means that they have a problem with how they were nurtured or not.
Right. So there's so many, so I just gave you these rapid fire questions as examples of, if you're wondering any of those issues, you should really consider seriously finding a good therapist. And I know we could go a lot deeper into all of those. I know I could with you. But just to sort of wrap up, we had a question from the room here about the connection between acting or method acting and therapeutic goals. Can you speak about that? You have a background in that. I've been recommending to clients to it's a fun way of exploring emotions and things.
So doing improv, doing drama classes, doing stand-up, doing anything that allows you to work with yourself and your emotions as a method to bring something to the world is very helpful, because basically what we do in a good therapeutic engagement is to help people figure out more about who they are and how they can operate in the world in the way that is more satisfying, more connecting, more overall happy. So when you do good method acting, you have to learn about who you are enough that you can now bring that as choices into your work as an actor or as a dramatist or a writer or a director. You always look at how can I get this story to become more truthful and universal. So by getting to dig into who you are, you get to figure out how to use yourself effectively as an artist. But in the side of my work and therapeutically, when you get to know more about who you are, you can bring to the session a lot more truth, and you have access now a lot more truth. Emotionally, you're being trained to go deeper instead of running away. I always look at my work as emotionally, when there is emotional fire, most people go, oh, fuck, I'm sorry. And my job is to see everybody running the other way and go, okay, I see where the fire is. Let me go right into it. So in any good drama class, your job is to go right into the core of that experience that you're having. And if you learn more about what is the core of an experience that is truly yours, that would be helpful therapeutically. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of actors that mistreat themselves to really be able to perform at a high level of emotional engagement through self-torturing or through neglect. And I don't think that is sustainable, and that's why I see a lot of artists that are quite burned out and quite sick. So the idea is to learn to use yourself in a way that you consider that loving. And of course, as a method actor, if you're going to perform something that is painful and so on, you want to embed yourself in that experience, but you do it through the love of knowing that you're doing that for the greater purpose of serving the story, not to hurt yourself. So you put yourself in a hurtful situation so you can land yourself to a bigger picture and use that to, in my case, to awaken, to make people feel, and ultimately also to entertain, which is a fair thing.
Yeah. One thing that I've discovered also through method acting and through recommending it to others is that to be an effective actor, you need to be able to relax your entire, what they call the instrument, which is your body. Relax your body, and so that it can become more of a blank canvas for whatever character you're going to play. So if you have naturally this weird twitch in or if you have a stiffness in the face, you're not going to be able to play certain roles very well. And seeing that in stark contrast, like, you can't act this role, you better, like, work on this, we're going to assign this to you, it forces the person to pay more attention to what's going on with the face and the body. And one thing I've discovered in research on in the connection between the body and the mind in psychology is, and in just in neuroscience, is that we lock up a lot of our trauma in
our
like
cells.
stress, cortisol, and in cells. Yeah, at the cellular level, in our physical body. So a stiff personality will have a stiff body. And you can tell a lot about, like, if there are a lot of guys with Asian poker face. I don't know if you've heard that term, but a lot of Asians who have trouble like showing expression on their face. And this is all across. I used to think this was just an Asian American problem because I grew up here, but I went to Asia, like, spent half my life there now, and it's sort of like, it's this bizarre thing where 90% of Asian males in most Asian countries, the ones I've lived in and been in, have relatively emotionless expressions on their face, which make them great at poker because you can't read them. But it also is showing, I've discovered over time, is that there's this emotional numbness that enables them to do that, and it's like, and it feeds it.
So I imagine you want to change that, but
yeah, it's like, dude, smile, and he's like,
all right now,
right, and
it makes total sense for me why it would be really challenging from a coaching point of view have this blank face. Now, if I can offer that as a help for you and them, is that if they're doing that, it's because they never felt safe to be themselves.
Right, that's right.
So very unlikely they will get safer by anybody going like, come on, fuck up, man up, tell me what's the truth.
Right.
So the combination of man up with I get you, it's just very scary, right? And most people will go, no, it's not scary. I don't even feel fear. Fear is not part of my structure. Then you go, okay, so you're not human or you're bullshitting. Mm-hmm. And then you try to go back to support. I get it. You just don't see that you don't feel safe. Otherwise, let me help you rationally. How is it that you just have this poker face all the time?
Right.
So as they become aware that they have it because they're afraid of showing you the truth, then sooner or later they will show you the truth. And the truth will come with a lot of facial expression.
Oh yeah, right.
And that is where we get the work, and that's
where they begin to feel the flexibility of the face because they haven't felt those emotions in so long. So that there's a therapeutic way to come at that, and then there's like an acting way where you actually stretch your face. You go and you do all kinds of weird things. You look in the mirror, you try to make one eyebrow go up, and there's all kinds of things that acting. Then you're like, whoa, that. Moving in this weird way, like, a beginning method acting class will have you move like the wind, whatever that means to you, and then move like the mud, whatever that means to you. And you're moving in weird ways, and that actually unlocks new feelings in your body and your mind. And
by the way, it's so much fun.
It's so much fun.
When you go over the terrifying fear that you will have to show this very unfinished stuff within yourself. But that's where I gamify the work of therapy all the time. And people first are shocked with how you're laughing and having fun with shit. Well, if you don't do that, it gets a lot slower and a lot more painful. So when you use acting and drama and expressive arts in general as a method to work, then you gamify the stuff, and it becomes more fun and it becomes more doable, and it's faster too.
Yeah, gamified. And by the way, I did another Man Up episode on method acting, so can't remember which episode number that is, but you can look that up. And just to end off, one last question. There's this great quote from the movie Fight Club, Charles Palahniuk, his book. Self-help is masturbation. So I've seen that phrase come up in other Facebook groups that are for these more of like the more militant, tough guy man. And what do you think of that phrase? Is it partly true? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I love Fight Club, and I grew up with that somewhat. And I believe the approach to it is really, really intriguing to me. However, that expression talks about more being in your head. Being in your head is masturbating yourself. And we're in our head, or what we call being in our head, is when it's not safe to be authentic, to be more fully you, and to feel and think at the same time and produce constantly stuff in the world based on who you feel you are, who you think you are in a combined way. So I would suggest that if you're in your head, you're masturbating yourself, and it's not really going to be helpful and long-lasting. So part of your job is to not use personal self-help as a way of masturbating yourself as a way of self-soothing. What you want is to go beyond that and being able to understand what it means to take a jump and a commitment into who you are, learn more about who you are, and use that to grow and progress. A lot of very strong male, because I have quite a strong male energy, very strong males have come to me for help during the years. One big part that they need to understand that they will not be able to connect to other humans by plowing through emotions, which is how they became strong men. Because plowing through allow them to become freer and feel safer and gain access and be successful. But it's not really the full story. So a lot of the work that needs to be done with men that have developed that adaptation is to help them see that by becoming more who they are and being able to emote the softer, the nuanced stuff, they become stronger. The warrior can become even more committed, but also you start getting other archetypes working as the lover and the magical child. And if you want to get laid, if you want to have more sex, if you want to love women or male and have more intimacy and connection, you need to learn how to cry. You need to learn how to let your voice be strange and get all stuffy and snotty and shitty and crazy. And the way to get into somebody's heart is to be able to sit in yours and to open it up. So the plowing through will never really work more than for one night stands. Right?
Yeah. So one of the so trying to end off here, but there's so many things you keep saying that trigger other thoughts. One of the things that I've encountered over and over in the past couple of years in my coaching practice is once a guy starts to, so the big tough guys, well, they don't have to be big, just tough guys, mentally or physically, when they start to become more vulnerable, they're very afraid of releasing the emotion because they're afraid of that emotional expression. Like crying, for instance. They may not think that they're afraid of crying, but once they're like, don't take me there. You don't want me to go there. You don't want me to go there. Right? And they're like, I'm like, no, I do. I'm trying to get you there. And they're like, no, you're going to regret this. And I'm like, well, let's see. And then they let it out, and it's really beautiful. But then it's so like I can talk about myself going through the phase of learning how to cry, because it sounds like a weird thing. Like how
it's remembering.
If you cut me, I'll cry. All right, what's the big deal? But like there's actually an art to it. And
it's remembering how to cry, right?
Remembering how to cry.
We came up with a really clear sense. You don't give me milk.
Every baby knows how to cry.
And I will blow your fucking brain, or you give me milk.
Right.
Or I will blow your brain, or you give me milk. Right. So we come with that, which is our condition out of it. But it's very scary
We're conditioned out of it. Yeah.
People.
Well, when a baby is born, you want it to cry. I mean, that's a sign that it's breathing and everything's alive. Well,
actually, when a male or a woman is a grown-up, we want them to cry. That's the same sign that they're alive and healthy.
Yes.
Now, if you never stop crying, well, obviously it's not good health.
Yeah.
But being able to access that on an ongoing basis is
well, my method acting coach put it this way: is like, it's easy to start crying because he gets all these people who hire him to teach them how to cry, and it's like, this is easy. What's hard is to turn it off like a tap, and especially if you're actually rehearsals, and you got to cry and then yell cut and go for lunch and come back and do it again and cut and try and direct. So to come in and out of that, so I found that like as I get more experience releasing emotional expressions that would have scared me before, it is like an art where you got to like be able to turn it back off and go back to it and turn it on. So like a spout, a tap, and having that emotional control. So,
well, that's the craft of an actor, which is not really required at all as a human. As a human, what is required is to learn when the pinch of pain is coming from within, to understand how you developed the self-supportive mechanisms to avoid that.
Yeah.
Understand that you developed that to survive your upbringing, and then philosophically and cognitively first going like, wait a minute, I don't need that. Strength for me as a man or a woman is to allow that pinch to turn into full-blown expression. And through that process, we get to learn, become more wise, and turn trauma into what we call post-traumatic strength or post-traumatic growth. And the beauty of it, and you know when somebody has healed trauma because they don't speak about trauma as a problem anymore. We become grateful for our pain, neglect, and trauma because we have become something that now we feel proud, we're satisfied and happy. And without that trauma, for sure we will not have become this. So we are now honoring the pain and the trauma, which I have been blessed with quite a bit in my childhood. And therefore I have been able to really draw upon that to now help thousands of people. And that is one of the things that becomes satisfying. When you go through your healing, then you become at service in the world through what you learn, through the pain you went through. So now when you start making a lot of money and helping a lot of people that you're honored to be doing, then you go, okay, that's probably not that bad. And sooner or later you go, fuck yeah, I love that I was violated, brutally assaulted. My parents were shitty. My mother was terrible. She touched me weird, right? And I'm talking about deep shit. I'm not talking about I didn't get the train that I wanted at 4. I'm talking about going deep, tremendously painful, humanly horrifying shit. I want you to know that if you went through that, do not stay alone. Do not be alone and do not lose hope. That kind of stuff is the stuff that if you work on it, and if it's severe, it might take years, but if you work on it, you get the payoff. What I call it, you cash your karma. And it doesn't come just with feeling good. It comes with service to others, really deep satisfaction, and a lot of money, which a lot of people tend to look for, so abundance. So don't stay there waiting. Just keep reaching out and don't stop until you find the support that you need.
Yeah, great way to end it. So join the Private Man Up Facebook group. I'll click the link, join the group. I'll see you inside the group. Thank you very much, Gui.
My pleasure, man.
Sharing
Thank you
your
so much
wisdom.
for having me.
My pleasure, man.